It's the classic problem with D&D combat. It's life or death, but it's so boring. This one hidden mechanic can fix it. Hey there, adventurers. I'm Judd, and this is Short Rest Studios. Every DM faces this at one time or another. You're running a combat encounter that should be the fight of your PC's lives, but it turns into round after round of dice rolls, math, and waiting around for your wizard to thumb through his spell book, even though you know he's just going to cast Fireball again.
Fireball!
Coming up, we're going to talk about the one simple reason your combat is probably boring, and the one mechanic that can take that slog of a monster battle and make it dynamic and exciting. But first, I want to give a shout out to Into the AM. Their shirts may not improve your combat encounters, but they are some of my favorite on the planet. I'm wearing one right now, and not only is the graphic incredibly cool, but this shirt is super comfortable and fits perfectly. Plus, they have shorts, hoodies, basic tees, and they're all great quality. You can use the link in the description to get 10% off your entire order. If your combat encounters are boring, it's probably because of this one simple reason. They're always the same. Your party finds some baddies, they roll initiative, both parties proceed to beat each other to death. There's no variation, and maybe there aren't any consequences. Sure, somebody could die, but what effect does the encounter have on the rest of your campaign narrative? What's riding on it? What if you could make these combat outcomes more unpredictable? What if every fight wasn't a fight to the death? Because realistically, every fight wouldn't be a fight to the death. Yes, I'm talking about playing fantasy pretend, and I used the word realistically. Live with it.
It's not real!
There's an optional rule right there in the Dungeon Master's Guide that can save your D&D combat. It's called morale. Morale is a mechanic that dates all the way back to original D&D. It's pretty much always been an optional mechanic, but it was a lot more prevalent in older editions. Morale scores ranging from 2 to 12 were actually included in monster stat blocks back in the day. A rule in the new Easy to Master Dungeons & Dragons box set from 1991, aka the Troy Denning Black Box, reads, "A monster or NPC who rolls 12 for his morale check has become a fanatic. A fanatic need not check morale again during this particular encounter." And guess what? It's still part of D&D 5e. Morale is hanging out way back here on page 273 of the DMG, and here's how it works. Stick around because later I'm going to give you some examples that show how it can improve your combat encounters. The morale mechanic is basically a rule you can use to determine when monsters and NPCs might run away from a fight. Essentially, you roll a check under certain conditions, and if the creatures fail that check, they skedaddle. For individual creatures, the conditions are: they're surprised, they're reduced to half their hit points or fewer for the first time in the battle, they have no way to harm the opposing side on their turn. For groups of creatures, the conditions are a little different. All the creatures in the group are surprised, the group's leader is reduced to 0 hit points, incapacitated, taken prisoner, or otherwise removed from the battle. The group is reduced to half its original size with no losses on the opposing side. When one of these conditions occurs, you make a DC 10 Wisdom saving throw for the creature or the group's leader. If the opposition is overwhelming, you make the save with disadvantage, or as the DM, you might decide it fails automatically. On a failed save, the creature or group flees by the quickest route. If they can't get away, they'll surrender, but there is a twist. If they're attacked while attempting to surrender, the battle might resume, and they likely won't try to flee or surrender again.
What a twist.
According to the DMG, a failed morale check isn't always to the player's benefit. You know, if the enemy warns the rest of the dungeon or runs off with the treasure. Instead of the usual hit it till it dies combat, you know, where your monsters are just treasure piñatas.
Where is that dreaded piñata?
Morale adds depth, complexity, and repercussions beyond this immediate encounter, and it encourages your players to think more strategically and creatively. Maybe they'll focus on demoralizing their foes or blocking their escape routes instead of just hitting them over and over and over and over.
I'll blow my nose at you, so-called Arthur King!
Here's a tip for you that's not in the book. Rather than just rolling for morale anytime one of those conditions I talked about occurs, think about the motivations of your bad guys. The reason they're fighting will have a huge bearing on whether or not they're willing to stay and fight no matter what. Hey, don't forget to like this video if you're getting something out of it, and subscribe to the channel for more D&D and TTRPG stuff. And check out the pinned comment for more ways you can support Short Rest Studios. Now, how about some examples? Let's say your first level party is up against against a bunch of goblins, led by a real bossy bugbear. When you plan that encounter, maybe you decide that the bugbear bullied the goblins into fighting. If he dies, you can roll a morale check to see if they stick around. Or maybe your party is fighting a marauding mercenary band. They were hired to take your PCs out, or they just want to steal their stuff. These guys probably don't have a compelling personal reason to fight to the death. They could always bolt and try again later, or go find some weaker marks. If half of them wind up dead, that's a good time for a morale check. On the other hand, if your PCs are facing a disciplined squad of hobgoblins that fights like a well-oiled machine, it may not necessarily make sense to make a morale check under some of these conditions. More disciplined soldiers are going to be less likely to run away. Or let's take it to an extreme. What if your party is infiltrating a red dragon's lair and they discover an egg? That dragon mama has a vested personal emotional interest in fighting to the last. There's no way she'd run away, so it would make no sense to use a morale check when she got down to half HP. And in many of these situations, your party will have to face the consequences. If those goblins scram, well, maybe they warn the rest of their camp that you're coming after you kill Gargnak the Flatulent. Now your party has to face down a whole goblin horde. Or maybe your party's pounding away at a pack of kobolds who bail, only to lead your PCs right to that angry red dragon. Or maybe you capture one of them and she spills the beans on the dragons packed with Tiamat. Creating these kinds of options, introducing this level of unpredictability to your combat encounters, can create all kinds of new twists and turns in your D&D campaign. And that's the kind of thing that turns a boring slugfest into a dynamic, heart-pounding battle. Hey, you just rolled a nat 20 on your morale check. Take a look at this video if you're looking for more ways to liven up your combat.